The American people were silenced for 3 years because of what China has done and because of our federal government colluding to cover up what China released into the globe. So we want American citizens to, yes, have a government put out truthful information. And also the people are the check on the government to say, hey, is that right? Is that accurate? Something seems off here. I have a question. Here's some information that I found out because, hey, federal government, maybe you don't know everything.
That was Bobo the Congress clown going on yet another rant about how the United States is, quote, colluding with China to cover up what they released. Like we're in some sort of high action thriller movie, suggesting that COVID is the result of a maliciously and intentionally released bioweapon onto the entire globe. Like, girl, don't be so dramatic. Deep down in her statement, though, is a huge secret that she reveals if you listen carefully. But first, let's address how Republicans are still holding on to this dying flame that is the whole COVID pandemic, whilst failing to acknowledge that it was Republicans that were in leadership at the height of the pandemic in the first place. Now, before we get into our next clip, I do want to mention that the US Department of Energy came out with a report recently suggesting with low confidence that the COVID-19 pandemic began after an unintentional laboratory leak from the Wuhan, China Institute of Virology. But this does not claim that brown-haired Marjorie Taylor Greene is correct in insinuating that COVID began as a bioweapon that was intentionally and maliciously released onto the entire globe, that the United States and China are somehow trying to collude in covering up. Now, instead, this does prove some evidence toward the lab leak theory, which deserves to be investigated. But let's get to this next clip where Bobo is once again called out for her insane rant.
Since we brought up COVID, I just want to respond and to remind the majority that COVID did not start under the Biden administration. It started under the Trump administration, and it was Donald Trump who closed businesses. It was Donald Trump who closed schools. It was Donald Trump who mandated masks. It was Donald Trump who came up with the vaccine, which I don't have a problem with, but if you have a problem with it, it was Donald Trump's vaccine. And so when we bring up COVID, we seem to have amnesia of when COVID started, who it started under.
Amnesia or delusion? Because if Republicans are going to get pressed that schools and businesses were shut down once COVID struck, at least get the timeline right. If Republicans are going to criticize Biden, criticize him for keeping schools and businesses closed until we are able to manufacture and deploy a life-saving vaccine to eliminate the spread of COVID. But this is Republicans' bread and butter. This is all that they do. They project blame towards Democrats for actions that they did. Similar to what happened in East Palestine, where they failed to acknowledge that it was under Republican control in the Trump administration that safety regulations were repealed, which would have and could have mitigated a disaster like the toxic train wreck that happened. This is all that they do. Project, project, project. Now, to be clear, the disaster in East Palestine has only been made worse by the butchered and inadequate federal response by Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg in the Biden administration. But clips like this reveal a big secret about Republicans and Lauren Boebert. That secret is they are not interested in governing. They are only interested in riling up their base and fear-mongering about Democrats to fundraise off of sound bites like this. Republicans have no plans to fix the economy. They have no plans to fix our healthcare system. They spend all of their time manufacturing nonsense culture war issues like wokeism in schools, or how drag queens are dangerous, or critical race theory, which they rail against 24/7, yet they can't even define what critical race theory is, or how Dr. Fauci is somehow dangerous. Good grief.
You guys don't like Dr. Fauci, but it was Donald Trump who listened to Dr. Fauci. And so at the end of the day, you guys want to complain about things that happened under the last 2 years. You're allowed to have valid complaints, but what I'd love to hear from the majority is the criticism of the Trump administration and Donald Trump and the decisions that were made during that administration, which you guys use as talking points to hit the president of the United States over Joe Biden, but he was not in charge.
100%. Look, Republicans, if you're gonna get pressed, at least get the timeline right. But seriously, who still wants to be talking about COVID? It's like my grandmother said, Scott, they're trying to beat blood out of a radish. Republicans would rather spend their time talking about nonsense culture war issues and fear-mongering rather than fixing actual issues that affect Americans, like lowering the prices of prescription drugs, ending homelessness, preventing gun violence, fixing infrastructure. Yet the first thing that Republicans did when they took control of the House of Representatives was pass a hollow resolution condemning the horrors of socialism. Nothing in the resolution actually had any tangible effect benefiting the lives of everyday Americans. It was all rhetoric and a waste of our taxpayer dollars. Or shortly after Republicans won the House of Representatives, they opened up a committee hearing to talk about how the right wing is silenced by social media platforms like Twitter, which backfired super hard because representatives like AOC and Gerald Connolly actually proved quite the opposite, that social media platforms actually silence left-wingers and liberals more than people on the right wing. Again, the secret is revealed. Republicans have no plans to fix the economy. They have no plans to actually fix issues that matter to everyday Americans. They spend all their time going through performative nonsense to fearmonger about other people like Biden and the Democrats. They have no plans to fix the economy. This is all that they do, project, project, project. So don't fall for their acts. And that is all I have for you today on The Breakdown. Thank you for joining me. My name is Scott Johnson. You can find more of me on my TikTok, which is in the description link below, as well as my YouTube where I post my longer form content. It's pretty awesome. You should totally go check it out. But most importantly, do not forget to smash that subscribe button to The Breakdown, where you can find more from independent creators like myself. These videos are entertaining and informative, and they're pretty awesome, so you should totally binge watch them. I'll see you in the next video.